Wouldn't that mean we'd like collectively be pregnant? What is that image? Why does he look like that? Now that we're revisiting the factions, I wonder what new lore or faction the writers have added into 40k. Is it going to be mostly the same? Will Bricky have the same style of storytelling? I'd love to hear which one's your favorite faction and why. Are you a big supporter of the Big E, or are you perhaps a heretic? Make sure to drop it in the comments. All right, let's get started with the video.
In the kind brightness of the far past, there was no war.
I love the Windows
for
background.
a long time fairly empty and quiet. The first known species to appear during this time are known only as the Old Ones, cosmic entities that traveled across the galaxy with ease and seeded life through the stars.
You might be talking about us.
A new species began to arise. The Necron tier. Evolving under the harshness of a devastatingly powerful star, the short-lived and irradiated Necron tier try to find the secret to eternal life and to be freed from their terrible existence. As they expand through the stars, they find the Old Ones and they plead to them to share the secrets of the universe and grant them purchase from their short and painful existence. The Old Ones respond with a lol and a lamau, and with their immense power, they force them back to their homeworld. The Necron tier, filled with rage and hatred, make it their duty to get revenge on the Old Ones. A revenge that would come swiftly as a chance encounter with other gods gave them a solution. These other gods were known as the Catan, a race of highly powerful star-consuming entities. Do not fear, young mortals, for we, the Catan, will provide you with the immortality you seek.
All right. Okay, so it's been a while since we last watched the Bricky video, but from what I remember.
Shake a poor sinner's hand. Quoted from Mephetron, the Deceiver. The Necron tier accepted the Catan's offer of immortality, but believe it or not, this turned out to be a ruse. A trick. The Catan crafted gigantic furnaces and began the process of biotransference. The Necron tier willingly walked line by line into the furnace engines made by gods who devour stars and had their souls consumed instead. The short-lived, irradiated, and cancer-inflicted race of the Necron tier ceased to be, and the immortal, soulless Necrons remained. Now backed by the immense power of the Catan, the Necrons rally against the Old Ones, and the bitter conflict in the stars at this time is known as the War in Heaven. Despite creating various races and entities to aid them in this battle, the Old Ones are overwhelmed and eradicated down to the last, due to the sheer power of the Catan
and the
off the
Necrons.
souls of the Necron tier, and with an army of unthinkable robotic slaves at their behest. However, the Catan are greedy, spiteful gods, and when there was no foe worth killing, they turn on each other. The Necrons then put their sights towards the Catan and lay waste to them, securing their freedom. The once subservient Necrons now control their former masters. Worn out and weakened by these wars, the Necrons under their leader Zarek, the Silent King, lie dormant with a plan to eventually wake and reclaim control over the galaxy. Over millions of years, empires rise and they fall.
Okay, so that was the first big event of Warhammer overall. War in Heaven. Yeah, the Necrons. The Necrons are just such little shits. They're so war thirsty, they turn against the people who gave them power. Bunch of little shits.
The species created by the Old Ones have footholds over the galaxy, but on a pale blue dot in the thick of all this conflict, humanity begins to evolve. And for the most part, the basic path of humanity's evolution remains the same as it is now for almost 15,000 years. Right now, in the 21st century, this is canon. You, right now, Twitch streamer reacting to this video, you existed at a point in the Warhammer universe. But with time,
Bricky. Yes, it is I.
and the power of their technology technology becomes unmatched, and the golden age of expansion begins. Humanity starts to branch out through the stars with powerful tools used for agriculture, mining, and expansion. Some branches of humanity would eventually settle far away from Earth itself, and around this time, the psychic ability of humans are greatly expanded, and what we begin to know as psychers appear. But despite all the progress, things would begin to collapse. The machines created to aid humanity would turn on them in M23, an event known as the Cybernetic Revolt. And
I love that he's using this movie. What's it called? What's this movie called? The one he's using in the background with Keanu? I forgot. It's fucking The Matrix. This is The Matrix, right? Matrix Evolution. Okay, yeah. It's actually a really good reference.
Trade would begin to collapse due to the immaterial warp, aka actual hell, beginning to cause ruptures in space and time. These warp stones would separate humanity, and this would be what is known as the Age of Strife. The warp, a sea of souls, storing all thought, emotion, and the souls of those who have passed on, begin fluctuating into something terrible, as far on the horizon, something horrendous was brewing. You see, the warp isn't just a random assortment of chaotic energy. It is fairly well organized thanks to those living in the galaxy. The warp itself acts as an afterlife of sorts, and the actions of the innumerable amount of creatures who live in the galaxy have manifested a pantheon of organized entities known as the Forces of Chaos. At their helm are three major entities,
Yes.
Korn, Norgal, and Zeech. However, a fourth one, Slaanesh.
And as you guys always say, I'll probably be a corn chaos god. A corn chaos daemon. Nurgle, woo! Chat, who's your favorite chaos god?
Was about to be born. The ancient Eldar were one of the first species created by the Old Ones, and due to their extreme and unbridled excess, the birthing of Slaanesh tore a hole in the galaxy and forever split the Eldar into those of the craft world, who sought to bring their species back together, and those of the Drukhari, who wished to continue what caused the birth of Slaanesh in the...
This is probably one of my favorite parts of the birth of Slaanesh. The fact that it divided the Eldari into two groups, and the fact that Slaanesh was born from all of these powerful emotions from the empaths of Warhammer, aka the Eldars. So much powerful emotions that they literally birthed a fucking god. It's such a wild concept. It's so creative. Imagine if humans birth a god from all the suffering, the pain, the joy, the happiness we experience collectively as one. I'd fear what kind of god we'd birth. Wouldn't that mean we'd collectively be pregnant?
First place. The birthing of this fourth chaos god settled the warp storms of the Immaterium and ended the Age of Strife, but humanity was still fractured. So one man revealed himself and spearheaded an immense attempt to reunite all the fractured pieces of humanity. That man was the Emperor of Mankind. After reclaiming the nearly destroyed Earth, the Emperor embarked on the Unification Wars to unite humanity under the banner of the Imperium of Man. However, due to the very long and devastating impact of the Age of Strife, humanity as we know it is not the same. To reconquer Earth, the Emperor would need more than mere men. Great beings, known as the Thunder Warriors, were recruited by the Emperor to reclaim the Earth with ease. But these warriors are a blunt tool and had, overstayed their welcome. He would need something better, and that solution would be known as the Space Marines. Superhuman soldiers that will have the skill and cunning exponentially greater than the mortal man. These new warriors would be commanded by an elite group of his very own sons known as the Primarchs. Unfortunately, though, Daddy didn't charge the baby monitor, and his 18 sons would be stolen by the forces of chaos and scattered across the galaxy. This would begin the Great Crusade. crusade, a monumental task to take back the stars in the name of humanity and reclaim the lost Primarch sons. However, he would need the fires of industry to make this happen. Looking to the distant cousins of Mars, the Emperor signed a treaty with the technologically irradiated hellscape of the Red Planet and allowed the cult of the machine god, the Mechanicum, to supply his crusade. While Space Marines were the tip of the spear, their numbers paled to the vast might of the Imperial Army and Navy. The Astra Militarum and their seemingly endless numbers make up the bulk of the fighting force for humanity, supplied by the intelligence and prowess of various agents of the Imperium, such as rogue traders and assassins. Due to the
Need to play Rogue Trader, by the way.
The lack of connectivity between the worlds, what a society had become over thousands of years became mysterious and varied. Tools once used for harvesting and agriculture now are being used as machines of war in the form of Imperial Knights. Some of these fractures of humanity would even be changed further and become unrecognizable to the average human.
See, I'd love to see the Mechanicus in action. Because I don't think they fight in Space Marine 2 or 1.
Differences in size, skin color, appendages, cat ears sometimes. Some would go so far to become their own galactic societies, like the miners of the Galactic Core and their immense supercomputers, forming the Leagues of Votan. After an incredible amount of effort and books, the lost sons of the Emperor would be reunited, and the Imperium of Man would be firmly established. This, however, would not last. Be it intentional or accidental, the Emperor would not reveal to his sons the true nature of the galaxy and the terrors of the warp. And this oversight would result in one of the most impactful wars in humanity's history. The favorite son of the Emperor, Horus, would fall to the powers of chaos.
Oh my gosh, that image of him is very cool.
And turn on his father. This betrayal, this backstabbing, this heresy.
Horus did nothing wrong.
This Horus heresy.
The Horus heresy
Would result
that I
in a
still need to
split
get
in
into.
the Imperium with devastating consequences. Half of the Emperor's loyal sons would fall to chaos and become the Chaos Space Marines, along with the forces of the Dark Mechanicum and the Chaos Knights. The conflict would result.
What is that image? Why does he look like that? Look at this Chaos Dreadnought. Or is that just a Chaos Space Marine? He kind of looks like an orc. That's Horus. Why he look like that?
In the absolute obliteration of Horus and the physical death of the Emperor himself. The near-dead body of the Emperor will be placed on the Golden Throne to serve as a beacon of humanity and allow for the continued ability to travel the stars, protected by his most loyal, the Adeptus Custodes. The Imperium would be vulnerable during this age of rebirth, and Terra would find itself under siege by one of the most formidable species in the galaxy, the Orcs. As time went on and memories of the Emperor's vision began to fade, the Emperor would become less of a head of state and more of a religious figure. And the Imperium would change to reflect this. The leadership on a planet would be at the behest of the High Lords of Terra, and their actions would be courtesy of the incomparable power and authority of the Inquisition. The zealots of the Imperium would intensify and create a brand new era known as the Age of Apostasy. And this ecclesiarchal command of the Imperium would end up with one of the strongest fighting forces of Terra, the Adeptus Sororitas. Over time, this age would come to pass, and we would approach the 40th millennium of Warhammer 40,000. Which, you guessed it, would come with its own form of problems. A primitive species once found during a recon mission would be able to evolve in relative secrecy for 6,000 years, becoming a highly advanced coalition of aliens known as the Tau Empire.
The Tau versus the Adeptus Sororitas.
And if the threats of the galaxy weren't bad enough, there are threats from outside the galaxy. As a monster has begun to wrap its tendrils around the Milky Way, the Tyranids, monsters that serve a psychic hive mind and present tactics previously unseen in the Milky Way. Be it a direct assault with their monstrous bug-like presence or through the more covert gene stealer cults, the presence of yet another threat in the galaxy is proving proving to be overwhelming to the Imperium. In the
So the Tyranids just basically came out during the 40k era then. Because I'm wondering, what if the Necrontyr, the old ones, the Catan fought with the Tyranids? You know, makes me kind of curious.
41st millennium, there is no peace among the stars. At any point, your life can and will be threatened by the Xenos races uncountable, or by the arch enemy of chaos within, or by the decroded terror that is the Imperium itself. It is to live in the cruelest and most bloody regime imaginable. Forget the power of technology and science, or the safety of promise and understanding. For in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war.
Hammer! Okay, just a quick comment. It seems that Bricky has kind of grown out of the memery phase in his storytelling. You know how he would always put in memes, put in funny images. Now it seems a bit more serious, which is not bad. It's not bad per se, but I still very much enjoy his storytelling and the way he expresses all the factions. You know, he's got a lot of passion with storytelling. All right, everybody, let's start with the factions. Oh.
A fantastic job once again, Mr. Kurz, the Night Haunter himself. Oh, didn't you love that, my faithful audience? Once again, we have another criminal over the course of 6 hours break every single bone in his body. And with that, once again, our glorious leader has brought the crime rate to 0%. Always brought to you here on Nostroman News.
Nostroman News.
Thank you once again for joining us. Our top stories for tonight. The weather forecast appears to be rainy with extra dark, so make sure you pack those extra batteries for your lamp packs. And of course, let's not forget the fantastic gang violence problem we're currently having. Oh, I'm sorry. What's that? Oh, right. It's gone. It's looking to be a chilly one tonight as well, so make sure your skin capes are nice and tight. Wait, hold on, one moment. No.
I feel like the volume's a bit too low.
Adamantium reserves have tripled?
Oh.
Wait, I'm sorry. Self-harm rates have gone down to 0%.
Oh, that's a W.
The Night Haunter smiled? No. This could only mean one thing. It is the Nostroman News' great privilege to bring some color back in your life with the brand new 3-part Gamer Subs drop exclusively on this here news network. That's right, your esteemed host Bricky myself is dropping a 3-part Gamer Subs release for pre-order available now and only for a couple.
The Gamer Subs plug, I love it. He's so creative with his plugs. Okay.
Couple of weeks. Not only does it include a completely brand new artwork reskin of the Sweet 6-pack flavor, one of the highest selling flavors in the entirety of Gamer Subs, but it also comes with the first ever all over print Gamer Subs 32-ounce jug. And if that
art is actually pretty cool.
If the phenomenal drink and drink holder is not enough for you, we have a desk mat to go along with it. That's right, the Herculean look of the brand new Sweet 6-pack
I love that art style.
is here. We're still looking at muscles beyond belief, but this time we're talking taste, we're talking Atlas, we're talking smooth. And if that wasn't enough, I, your co-host specifically, should you pre-order all 3 of these items, will personally hand sign a note for you, thanking you for supporting this network. All of this you can receive for 10% off if you go down in the description of this video.
Not gonna lie, I'm tempted.
Or go to gamersubs.com.
Not gonna lie, I want a Bricky signed
Save 10% off with
Gamer
code
subs
Bricky. Bring some
deathmatch.
color back into your life and increase production across the board for our glorious leader, the Night Haunter. Thank you, Gamer Subs, for sponsoring Nostrama News, and let us move on to our next scheduled program.
Yes.
5 years ago,
Okay, 5 years ago.
made every Warhammer 40k faction explained. A passion project of mine for a universe that I enjoyed so much. Its main purpose was to be a drawbridge, the separation between the layman who had only ever seen the big armored blue man situated neatly next to a Wetzel's Pretzels, and then the hardcore Warhammer lore nerd. That was just too wide, and there was nothing bridging these two together. Since 2020, Warhammer has exploded in popularity thanks to COVID, quality game updates, and a few excellent video games, and a couple mini-series. The sheer volume of people who have told me they have purchased miniatures due to that video alone makes me feel as if Games Workshop owes me commission.
He, honest to God, he should absolutely get sponsored by Games Workshop. Yes, I agree with you, Bricky. You, amongst other YouTubers, need to get uplifted by the company, honestly. But it was because of Space Marine 2 that I got into Warhammer. I've been aware of its existence. I think I also tried Total Warhammer a couple times, but you know, it was a bit too dark for me. I was an innocent little Oni. The universe was a bit too dark for me, but now that I've grown, I find the universe very interesting. Now I do wonder, what about you, chat? When did you get into Warhammer? What made you get into the series or the story?
However, that video is incomplete. I was not a casual fan, but I was also not a hardcore lore junkie. In the 5 years since that video's release,
he wasn't a hardcore lore junkie at that rate? Really? You wouldn't consider that hardcore? Well, I guess, in a way, he only scratches the surface of the stories.
At least multiple channels have sprouted up, and the drawbridge between casual to the obsessed has never been wider or easier to traverse. Even I, myself, have been a part of Adeptus Ridiculous, a podcast teaching lore in a much simpler and condensed form. Needless to say, I've learned a lot. Warhammer is so much more than just Spaceman shoots big gun. It has also grown substantially from its origins, being a Warhammer fantasy spin-off just in space. Now, it is a black library filled with immensely deep characters, difficult themes, and even some tear-jerking stories. It is a backdrop for 1 million stories over 1 million worlds, and I did not see its true depth in 2020. But now, I'd like to share what I've learned. We just had a brief summary of the world and each faction that takes place during it. And we did that because to truly understand each faction, we must understand what makes them the way they are. And to do so, we need to begin in chronological order, discussing their origins, their culture, their powers, and of course, what makes them oh so grimdark. So let's begin with the group that started it all and sing praise to the Infinite Empire.
The Necrons!
As mentioned before, the Necron tier were the original form of the Necrons, an alien race far away from us that lived short, painful lives due to the irradiation of their star. Normally, this would manifest as like a sort of cancer, a space cancer of sorts. The Necrons are very much inspired by the ancient Egyptian aesthetic, but unlike the windswept dunes commonly associated with it, the irradiated hellscape the Necron tier endured was far from picturesque. This also translates into their hierarchy. They are a race of nobles and peasants. Most of the peasants would often live for their very short amount of time, only a couple of decades.
So very, very old ways of living. The peasants and the servants and the nobles. Okay.
While the nobles tended to have better care and would live a little bit longer, but still far less than the average lifespan of a human, even today in the 21st century. The leader of the Necrons was Zarek, the Silent King. He was the one who took the deal with the Catan and the Deceiver. Of course, he wasn't aware of the fact that they were known as the Deceiver at the time, but the whole species was blinded by hate after being debased by the Old Ones on their quest to cure their illness. The sheer pain that underwent the Necron race can't be understated, as their fear was manic. The Catan are, of course, gods that
So their rage and their thirst for war is justified because of how they got deceived. They just wanted to cure their illness or their disease, their radiation, and they got deceived. Okay, okay. I understand them a bit more now.
Eat stars, and when the leader of your species tells you to march into the gigantic green furnaces to ascend to immortality, you march. The scenes from these are long lines of both the peasantry and nobles clutching their loved ones in a frantic act to save their own lives. Many of them already inflicted in the late stages of the space cancer, some of them crawling into the biotransference furnaces, trying to outrace death itself, without realizing death was the one who made these to begin with. What came out the other side was a soulless husk. And I say that literally. A soul is not an abstract concept like it is in our world, an immaterial version of oneself discussed and debated in religion and philosophy. No, in Warhammer, a soul is a real, tangible item of oneself. And the Catan basically were just like to
all the
every
souls.
single person who went in their furnaces. If you were
were they not aware that their souls were being devoured? Or I guess that was a deception part. I guess you don't really know if someone's eating at your soul, huh?
a peasant, you came out a Necron warrior, and you as an individual have ceased to be. You have no mind, you have no soul, and your body, as you know it, is made of an extremely advanced mass of re-knitting living metal known as necrodermis. You cannot think for yourself, for you do not have a brain to think with. All you do now
no brain,
is
only
await
kill?
protocols from your overlords, which are the nobles who came out of the furnaces with their minds intact.
So it's like a
Not
hive
their
mind
souls,
now.
mind you, but their minds are very much intact. These nobles now have command protocols, and they are able to command all of their peasantry and do with them whatever they wish.
Okay, so they didn't go through the little machine. That's why their soul and their brains are still intact?
Xeric, the Silent King, is the most advanced of all the Necrons, a perfect metallic version of himself with incredible power and intelligence. His strength allowed him to lead the undead and the unthinking armies of the Necrons to battle against the Catan when they were at their weakest due to their incessant infighting, and then win back their freedom. But gods cannot die. So in reality, what occurred is the Catan were shattered into thousands of pieces, and each shard of their god was trapped in a stasis vault and mind controlled to do the bidding of the Necrons they once enslaved. The biggest challenge they face now are actually the upstarts of the galaxy. The Eldar and the Orcs were quite prominent, and as you can imagine, a galactic war really takes its toll on the joints, or I guess the servos. It was in their best interest to wait out the galactic rise of the other races and come back at a more opportune time. So they went into stasis via these massive tomb complexes hidden beneath various worlds, biding their time until it was once again their opportunity to rule the galaxy. Xeric, the Silent King, as penance for his failure to his people, exiled himself into the darkness between stars for the next 60 million years with his perfect memory, a constant reminder of the doom he inflicted upon his people. Flash forward to the
Wait, so they have conscience. Oh, Xeric felt bad. Okay, that's really interesting.
modern day, and the Necrons are reawakening, but it isn't working as well as it could be. Whether the tomb world is reawakened naturally or by some imperial moron stepping on a green glowing rock, the Necrons have come back to reclaim a galaxy they consider rightly theirs. But 60 million years of hypersleep have taken their toll. Many Necron dynasties awake with systems unrestored and huge swaths of their population's minds completely lost.
60 million years of no updates. Imagine that. Damn, that update time would be forever.
Necron nobles wake with various mental faculties compromised, sometimes exhibiting traits similar to excessive paranoia, schizophrenia, or even dementia. One notable Necron Necron, Nemesaur Zandrek, believes that he is still back on his home planet fighting off separatists and interlopers. See, Oberyn, the separatists come, attempting to outflank me as they did at the 4th Battle of Vindach. How they calculate that daubing themselves green and roaring like savages will produce a different outcome, I cannot fathom. But it is of no account. Ready, my legions. Another glorious victory shall soon be ours. Other individuals, such as the esteemed Imhotep the Stormlord, seek to usurp the newly returned Silent King for rightful ruler over the Necron race, believing his time has come to an end, while scientists and archaeologists like Trazen the Infinite and Orikin the Diviner spend thousands of years bickering over artifacts and petty squabbles. Truly, the Necrons are a faction of unthinkable, unimaginable power, held back entirely by their own hubris and 60 million years of stasis. It is a species that does not know of time, only of the ravages brought by it. A pharaoh of a dynasty may just be as frightened to awake completely mad as they are to be assassinated while they sleep. Thousands of years pass in an instant. There is a play, like an opera play, a retelling of the War in Heaven in the Necron culture that takes 40 years to witness, because why leave? You have no need to eat or vacate your bowels. You are immortal, but you are soulless. Despite the Necrons' incredible technology, their mastery over time, reality itself, despite all of this, they still are missing a soul. And therein lies the biggest struggle. Most Necrons look to conquest the galaxy, kill the interlopers like the humans, Eldar, and orcs that scrape at a fraction of their power. But the end goal for many, including Zarek himself, is to return the souls to their bodies, to undo the horrible fate he cast upon them.
I'd imagine trying to do that would be impossible though, unless there's probably some way they can. But oof, that is such a sad goal to have. Very sad. I feel bad. I feel bad for the Necrons now. I'm sorry. I was shitting on them earlier. I was calling them little shits earlier.
This is not the interest of all. Many simply wish to rule their dynasty with an iron fist and kill all they consider unworthy.
The British
but to
Museum.
many others is to undo the decision that doomed them all. Before they can do that, there is a pest that needs exterminating. That is the fundamental understanding of the Necrons. They are so hyper advanced that their science borders on magic. They play with the fundamental aspects of reality and time. Their mastery of the physical galaxy is the strongest in the universe. Their weapons reduce people to the barest molecules, and they have devices capable of causing stars to supernova. They are unfathomably difficult to kill, as if you do fell one of their number, the living metal reknits itself and the reanimation protocols allow it to come back alive once again.
Okay. So it's like super annoying robots who, if you rip and tear them apart, they'll just reknit themselves. Okay, that's very strong. Very strong and scary enemies.
Masters of teleportation, and often killing a Necron fully will just have its consciousness translocated back to their tomb world to await reassembly. Normally, they utilize large phalanxes of warriors and honorary combats, but some of them have fallen to various mind viruses. The destroyer cults are hell-bent on killing anything and everyone that lives with an overwhelming force. And then there's the flayed ones, Necrons cursed with I have no mouth and I must scream, a panic attack virus, as the last laugh of Landogo, the Flayer Catan. Slowly losing their minds, they strip apart their foes and adorn their bodies with the skin of their enemies, trying to better return to their old feelings of flesh and blood. The Necrons are a degraded version of their mighty empire, and still one of the biggest threats in the galaxy. The only thing keeping them at bay currently is their awakening sickness and their infighting with no care to the timeline. But they are coming, and slowly they plan to rid this galaxy of the vermin that inhabit it. My people shackled.
Hold on. How do you kill a Necron then if they can just stitch themselves back together? I guess you would have to obliterate like a whole ass Necron.
The stars and broke mortality when the species you sprang from had barely left the slime pools it spawned in. Our wars burned reality, and the dominion of our kings is without limit. The The ground you tread on is not yours. It is ours. The war in heaven was a catastrophic time for the galaxy, and as stated in the above quote, burned reality. Of course, souls exist in Warhammer, and in the case of the Necron tier, they were consumed by the star gods. This begs the question, however, if you were to pass on, expire, as one might put it, where would your soul go? The answer to this is the warp. In Warhammer, a soul is real. And so is hell, the afterlife, the Empyrean, the Sea of Souls, the Immaterium. All of these names refer to the dimension parallel to our own known as the warp. Now, the warp is not like our reality. It does not follow the classic normalcy of time and space. It is defined as the Sea of Souls, and it acts like this in a more literal way than you can realize. To imagine the warp is to imagine the sea itself. Hell is real, and you can surf on it. It has a current and can become more dangerous depending on where you go and how bad the weather is.
So it's like space.
As the Immaterium is a reflection of our reality and of our souls, all thoughts, all emotions, all feeling that goes with a soul is passed on into the warp. If an entire planet decides it's going to engage in a blood-fueled rampage of murder and gore, then the warp around that planet will be affected in a similar manner. It's not something that you can see. It is a parallel, not perpendicular dimension. But it is changing. To expose oneself to the warp for any period of time invites certain death outside of the most iron-willed of individuals. And to stare into it will drive one mad. Much like the open seas, things dwell in the warp. Whether these beings were always there and were just emboldened.
Okay, this is what I haven't gotten into with the warp. Like, imagine the warp monsters, giants, alien that is just floating about the warp. Imagine the thought of making such powerful creatures in the warp. Like, it's very scary, also very fucking cool. It's a topic I want to get into, the warp itself and what dwells in the warp.
Emboldened by the carnage of the galaxy, we can only speculate at. At a time, you could say it was more calm, but a certain faction's galactic war in heaven didn't do it any favors. Now the warp is turbulent, and its realms belong to a pantheon of gods known simply as Chaos! The forces of chaos are beings that serve directly under their patron deity. There are 4 current gods of chaos at the moment: Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh. Each of them represent various facets of and emotions of sentient species and play a...
So, okay, let's get this straight. I am Khorne. Tzeentch is probably Cammy. Orc is probably Nurgle. I don't know who Slaanesh would be. Maybe Slaanesh would be Syriza. But I think Ark would do good as Nurgle. Cammy's definitely Tzeentch.
Great game against one another for total control over their realms. Interestingly enough, while their disciples have physical forms we can understand, the Chaos Gods do not have a physical visual that you can perceive in reality. So while there are tons of fantastic fan art, we do not know what they truly look like, though they are conveniently color-coded. Khorne is the god of blood and murder, carnage and slaughter. He is the one who is most powered by the wholesale killing of any living thing. For Khorne cares not from where the blood flows. With a sacred number of 8, he is the lord of all things involving killing and blood and gore. The champions are extremely strong as well, with monumental muscles and extremely large weapons. A true analog to Khorne would be his greater demon, the Bloodthirster, an enormous muscle-bound flying devil.
Okay, I want a model of the Bloodthirster. I saw a model of him. It's so cool.
With an axe so large it splits tanks in a single swing. They move into battle with armor of...
So you're saying Tang Senshi wouldn't be able to go against these Khorne demons then? Will Tang Senshi die in front of this demon?
brass adorned by the skulls of their foes and pools of freshly spilt blood.
Who's this
may
tiny
appear
warrior
to be
down there?
quite frightening, of course. Demonic, one might say.
Yeah, he kind of reminds me of the Balrog, although the Balrog's probably much more bigger.
In the world of chaos, all emotions feed one of these gods in one way or another. If you were to define Khorne with single words, you would use blood, carnage, murder, skulls. But you'd be missing out on important ones like strength, honor, prowess, courage, and skill. Khorne is not just about the wholesale slaughter
War
of people.
skills.
He is about the honor and power of martial combat. The true strength there is in besting someone in physical strength and skill. Of course, a murderer would be someone who would feed Khorne, but a soldier could feed Khorne. A martial artist or professional fighter could feed Khorne. A warrior, good or bad, feeds Khorne. A diplomat does not. A premier soldier does. A GoFundMe does not. This is what leads many mortals down the path of Khorne, for he will bless those that bring him enough skulls. And in a world this destructive, there are many ways to reap a high tally for him. Prepare the dread claws and unchain the mad ones. Glorious battle awaits us today, for the world below has refused to surrender. Let us descend upon them with fury and rage, giving no quarter and sparing only those warriors who fight well enough to earn a place amongst us.
So they're like the equivalent to an orc, but demons. So cool, so fucking cool. I'd be so intimidated if an army of Khorne were to land on our planet. Like, dude, we're so over. It's all over. Very cool, very cool.
As to the rest, their lives and possessions are ours, but their skulls are for Khorne. Normally, if I ever want to explain Khorne, I just kind of show them this clip.
I'd never stab you in the back, Shepherd. Warriors like you and me, straight to the face.
Yes.
Moving on.
Yes, I honor those type of warriors, you know. I love the concept of honorable warriors, whether they're good or bad, but they honor the code of warriors, which is never backstabbing, only fighting face to face. Tzeentch.
On this clip.
I'd never stab you in the back, Shepherd. Warriors like you and me, straight to the face.
Moving on, Tzeentch is the second god, the god of trickery and mischief, the changer of ways, the great conspirator and the architect of fate. With a sacred number of 9, Tzeentch is truly the god of change in all of its forms. But
okay, he has a very interesting art style or character. So he's got like little, I don't even know how to describe these, little appendages, holes on his head. And then he's got like a tentacle hair. And then you have like an opening here, and then an open stomach, and then with a tongue. So he devours with his stomach then. Okay, and he just levitates. He's just like me, eyes on his hands.
Is an obvious undercurrent of mischief and cunning. Tzeentch is such a liar that his pants have gone thermonuclear.
Oh my god, Bricky. Oh my god, that was so good. Sorry, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of dad jokes. Oh my god. Okay. Okay, Bricky, I see what you did there.
His favorite pastime is asking questions that have no answers while simultaneously making up answers on the spot to a question he didn't ask.
Have you ever had a dream that
you
want him to do you so much you could do anything?
I know, I said no memes and I love it. That's literally me when I'm streaming. How's your day? How do you, good day, good night, good evening, good time zone. Have you ever Okay, oh, this is a pretty sick artwork, by the way.
A conniving little bastard that every emotion of lying, of scheming, of trickery is a direct way to help feed him. An unfaithful partner, a politician, a spy. All these people feed Tzeentch in one way or another, and it doesn't matter if the intentions are good. Acceptance does not feed Tzeentch. Change does. Tzeentch doesn't care about your facts. He only wants opinions. Because he represents change, he also represents hope, though. Schemes are not always bad, and even
Okay, that's really cool. Okay, so he's not a very factual being. He's more on opinions. He's very opinionated.
the hope to make a better tomorrow is the change he seeks. Because he is the architect of fate and the mastery of sorcery, his presence is purely unknowable. Every depiction of a Tzeentchian demon contains more eyes than are necessary and more mouths than I know what to do with. It is a biblically accurate angel if the angel gaslit you into thinking birds are government drones. But are they? The creatures at his disposal adorn themselves with the knowledge of sorceries and the unknown, all to provide a mind-crushing experience. Fighting demons from outside of our reality is difficult enough, but fighting demons from unreality, purposely attempting to trick you, is a whole new thing entirely. And that is before we even get started on the gigantic bird of sorcery you're going to need to face.
Yeah, the creature that we face in Space Marine 2, I believe. Yes.
Do not ask which creature screams in the night. Do not question who waits for you in the shadow. It is my cry that wakes you in the night, and my body that crouches in the shadow. I am Tzeentch, and you are the puppet that dances to my tune. Third of the Chaos Gods is the one of acceptance of rot and pestilence, the grandfather himself,
the Rot Dan.
Papa Nurgle. Nurgle is the exact opposite of Tzeentch, where Tzeentch
He looks so happy. Look at that. Look at that. Look at the tongue with the stinky ass breath and the stinky tentacles and the discharge coming out of his mouth.
Tzeentch believes in change and hope for a future. Nurgle believes in stagnation and the end of everything. At one point or another, we will all decay. We will all rot, and we will all end.
Yes.
And with a sacred number of 7, every single thing, pestilence, boil, and everything in between, comes under the great shadow and girth of Nurgle himself.
He's a girthy boy.
For Nurgle, the plight of mortals is his fear and wine. And no matter how solid life might be, everything will decay in the end. In the creation of life, there must be an end to that life. And nobody has more creations to end lives than Grandfather Nurgle himself. Every boil, every blemish, every pus-filled wound and disease, every...
Oh my god, he could be like Dr. Pimple Popper, since he loves pus and pestilence and disease and wounds and cysts and growth and all that good stuff.
Rot, and every plague is kept and concocted by Nurgle. This, humorously, keeps Nurgle as a jovial god. He is full of life and laughter, and by creating as many diseases as he possibly can, he shares that joy with mortals. I mean, his envoy is the Great Unclean One, and look at how happy he is. And there's a lot.
That's just the kids. That's just the kids at the McDonald's playpen. They fucking, you know what I'm talking about? How kids in the McDonald's playpen, they vomit, they eat there, they splatter all their saliva. You know what I mean? I swear to God, I've been to a McDonald's playpen that smelled like vomit. In the ball pit, yep. You gotta see a picture of the clean one. Okay, let's take a glance at the picture of the clean one. Oh! I hate that. Oh, what the fuck? No. I prefer the unclean one. What the... Funny enough, I prefer the unclean one over this. What is this? Why? He's too clean. It's weird.
A lot of him to love. A fear of death in general is feeding Nurgle. All disease makes him stronger, but to pray for salvation for a wounded loved one is to feed Nurgle. The timeless and inevitable fear that one day you will rot and decay is what gives him strengths. The Peloton won't feed Nurgle, licking the doorknob on a public bathroom certainly does. However, should you embrace your grandfather's gifts, you may find an end to your pain. Maybe. All mortal followers of the Chaos Gods found themselves there in one way or another, either through the direct worship or the slow corrupting of their souls. But those that take Nurgle's gifts and embrace the decay of their bodies may end up being chosen among his few as a faithful servant. In doing so, you will be free of the pain caused by Nurgle's ailments, and you may even find yourself just as jovial and happy as he is.
It's like the caramel dancing. Dun, 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 dun.
Maybe. His enemies shall wither and die. His allies shall wither and die. The universe and all within it shall wither and die. And when the great corruption has settled over the land and permeated the very foundations of reality itself, then shall the Lord of all rise from the rot and ruin, spread his arms wide to reclaim all of his dutiful children. Those were the three major chaos gods for a very long time, emboldened by war and death on a galactic scale, ever present, but now fact on the suffering of a galaxy. One race, for a while, was able to elude the pull of chaos, an advanced race of psychically attuned aliens whose master over the physical world was so strong that chaos could not glean from them the morsels of power they once had. Or so they couldn't. Not for a long while. 60 million years ago, in an attempt to combat the Necrons in Catan, the Old Ones made a new species.
Why do they
one
look like that?
with innate power in the warp and the ability to harness it with a mastery that was unseen by so many others. A mastery so powerful, the Necrons retreated to sleep in order to wait it out. It was no longer a galaxy to be ruled by them, but instead begin the age of the
Eldar.
The Eldar are a race of pointed-eared humanoids that are all psychically attuned to the warp. If we're being meta here, these are space elves, and these elves rule the
Space elves.
galaxy in the time the Necrons went to sleep and humanity began to rise. The Eldar's empire was galaxy-wide and lasted for longer than any other galactic power that we know of. Their understanding of all things was exceptional. With every single one of them being psychers, they had the ability to master the warp and use it to their advantage. See, being a psyker is basically like being a wizard, or I guess in this case it's more of a sorcerer, since you are born with the gifts as opposed to learning them. In order to utilize your psychic abilities, however, you must then reach into the other dimension, into the warp, into hell for that power. So if you were to say, cast Fireball, your mind would reach into the warp, gather the strength to rewrite reality, to then cast Fireball. Now, you might think to yourself, doesn't that
it reminds me of Zinj then, altering reality.
I mean, if you were opening up a power to the warp, you may create a lot of risk to yourself because of all the horrible things we just talked about in the warp?
Yes.
Yes. However, in Warhammer 40k, willpower is a real, tangible thing in the sense that in its own right, it can be weaponized. Being strong of will means being strong of soul, and being strong of soul means you can resist the pull of the warp that much more. A more inexperienced psyker opens up a hole into the warp that is large.
Oh, you can play as a psyker and dark. This is Darktide, right?
And that hole widens to get more power, allowing evil things to get in. A powerful psyker is able to open a very small hole, but with immense force to get the same amount of power with less risk. The Eldar are master psychers. Every single one of them can call upon the warp, and over millions of years they have perfected it so much so that they can weave structures out of it. In some species in the galaxy, they utilize the warp itself for interstellar travel. The Eldar ain't having any of that noise. How about we utilize a fancy alternative mode of travel that is substantially safer than the old ones created, called the Webway? What about dying? Miss me with that. We no longer age. And if we do, we can just be reborn like that. Food? water, materials. We make things out of
need.
distilled warp essence itself. We
Distilled
sing
warp essence.
unreality into cathedrals to dine in. What truly could the Eldari Empire possibly fear?
Oh my gosh. I'd imagine that is what an Eldar Bricky would look like.
The Eldari Empire's biggest fear was themselves, with a society so perfect they wanted for naught, and this led them down dark and dangerous paths. When the base functions of society are no longer a problem for you, you tend to experiment. Perhaps the medium
like
rare
the rich
steak on your plate
bastards
would be better if it was
on our
elf
planet.
meat. Hey, I'm not saying we should make
Elf
cannibalism legal, but like,
Imagine elf meat, but like spam. Elf spam meats for breakfast. Would you eat elf spam meat?
what's the issue with a little taste? Violent sports is one thing, but how come we don't do sports to the death? I mean, I'm just saying, like,
Blood
if both
Bowl.
participants are willing and clear about it, like, what really is the problem there, you know? Art is in the eye of the viewer, and what is considered art is completely up to the concept of one's own interest. A canvas adorned with the blood of a man wronged is truly the visual poetry that our society needs. Hedonism, with a slow and consistent hedonism, the Eldar slid backwards into debauchery of the sort I cannot discuss on this YouTube video. Murder on stage, delicacies and drugs distilled from one another, the trade of slaves and concubines, and much.
Oh, wait. I didn't know. I think I forgot that the elves or the Eldar actually had slavery and concubines too. That would make sense.
Much worse. The Eldar physiology has their emotions heightened and they can feel more than a human does. So while it can provide lows of pure despair, it can also provide greater highs than you have ever known. And swinging between the two of them was the Eldar game. The warp took notice of this heavily, and it began to react. On a galactic scale, the debauchery and the hedonism of the Eldar race caused levels of warp storm so pronounced and so volatile that it cut off interstellar travel for all those who used it.
You know, this reminds me of a certain individual. I forgot what his name is. Someone so vile and nasty and engaged in so much wrong debauchery on a galactic scale.
Communications between planets was removed, and a nightmarish era of old night began. This
No. Oh my god!
continued for thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years. The Eldar all but removed from the problems being caused as they entered heights of more and more ecstasy. They needed more and more and more. Nothing was ever enough. More murder, more torture. It's art, it's delicacies, it's life. This silence offends Slanesh. Wait.
That other chaos god.
Slanesh, the prince of pleasure, she who thirsts, the god of unspeakable excess, is our fourth chaos god, with the sacred number of 6 adorning their title. Slanesh is a bit of a tricky one, because with our other 3 chaos gods, there was a certain understanding of human emotions and desires, but for Slanesh, that desire is how they get their power. The words to be used would be decadence, pleasure, perfection, passion, excess, and many others. The pursuit of more, the want to do more, experience more, become more. That's what gives Slanesh their gifts. A lot of people believe that Slanesh is something that originates with sex, specifically, and it makes sense why they assume that. The visuals of Slanesh patrons are all very lithe and sexual, but they are also intentionally androgynous to appear attractive to a variety of intrigues. However, to think that
looks like a Discord message.
Slanesh specifically derives from sex would be mistaken. While it is true that a lot of humanity's actions can relate to getting laid, and Slanesh is the dark prince of desire, it's more on the lines of feeling an excess of an emotion. It is excessive touch and scent and desire. And a lot of that has to do with sex. That's why it looks like sex, but it's more than just that. A patron of the arts may feed Slaanesh. One that aspires to become
Not that
the
kind of
perfect
patron.
chef or master of their craft, and the sheer pursuit of that alone will feed Slaanesh. Whiplash is Slaanesh's absolute favorite film. Videos where people beat Elden Ring on a dance pad feed Slaanesh.
There are no two words in the English language more harmful than good job.
But is there a line?
No, man, no.
This also moves into the concept of
Need to watch that
feeling.
movie.
Sensation
Whiplash.
is a majorly Slaanesh-coded thing. It might start off feeling good, but then you get to play around a little bit, you know? You play with a little bit of pain. Light pain might not be enough, so you might want more. Or inflicting the pain could be your jam. Music can increase to volumes that may hurt your ears, and even then that might not be enough. More. You must have more. Many of the disciples of Slaanesh carry a demonic form in their lithe grace.
Imagine them already being this excessive in emotion and senses. Imagine them eating 5 gum or be on crack. The Eldar on drugs. But isn't there Warhammer drugs? I think there is actually.
The Keeper of Secrets is his chosen envoy, and their movements are a blur of dance and pain with an aura all the more fatal. They dance and sing, but there's always a form of malice behind every action they take. An alluring gaze that will pull you in right before the demonic entity can crush you in that grip. Slaanesh's palace has 6 layers surrounding it, and one of them is the excess of gluttony, where the participant finds themselves in a beautiful banquet full of the most delicious foods imaginable. Tables of delicacies and rivers of wine tempt the user to such a degree that they cannot stop stuffing their face, unaware that the things they are eating are very vaguely familiar meat. If one does not see themselves drowning in the river of wine, they may soon fill their bodies up so much that they cease to function and fall over, becoming part of the banquet themselves.
What the Peter is what?
One of these 6 layers
What
of
the
Slaanesh's
fuck?
palace. This
What the
was
fuck?
the ecstasy that the Eldar civilization indulged in for millennia, and did so at a monumental scale that they created a god from it.
I think if they were Redditors, they'd be posting on every single fetish subreddit. If they ate 5 gum, I think they'd come a wormhole, probably.
Find pleasure in every moment. Indulge in every whim. Let lesser races feel the burden of their crude lives. We are beyond such concerns or worries. Every power is ours to use. Every sensation ours to experience. We are truly masters of the galaxy, and all others exist only to satisfy our curiosities. We have earned our position of power. Let us forever taste the fruits of such achievement. Time itself is ours to command. We are eternal.
The Gangutsu of Satan. That is such an accurate summary. Holy shit.
With the birth of Slaanesh, the Eldari Empire ceased to be. A catastrophic event so horrible that the warp ripped a hole permanently in our reality. A fissure forever known as the Eye of Terror. With the sudden inhalation of this god's largest breath, the Eldari souls are a currency to be now collected by She Who Thirsts. Trillions of Eldar died in an instant. Slaanesh gorging on their souls to satisfy his palate. 99.9% of their entire species died, and the rest are doomed to a fate worse than death. For Slaanesh now stakes a claim on each and every Eldar soul. From the moment they pass on, an eternity of torment awaits them. The remaining Eldar devote their entire lives to stopping this eventuality. Their dying race so devoted to saving themselves from the Dark Prince, and in doing so, have found very creative ways.
The Craft World Eldar. Guys, which Eldar, I guess, group would you rather be a part of?
In the modern world of Warhammer, the Craft World Eldar are the main force of Eldar in the galaxy and represent the elf style that many think of when you think elves in space. Fantasy elves in space, not those elves. We'll get to them.
Yes, the Drakari.
A Craft World is a
The
monumental
Drakari or something. I might have said it wrong.
large starship, the size of a continent, that
Looks like a
acts
mushroom
as a form
spore.
of flotilla. During the highest reaches of hedonism, many Eldar saw the demonic writing on the wall and began to try and seek asylum from their own debauchery. Those Eldar left on monumental craft worlds into the far reaches of the galaxy and saved themselves from Slaaneish's awakening. The main thing the craft world Eldar seek is to temper their minds and bodies in a way that will never allow them to slide back into their old ways. The representation they carry is that of a more feudal Japanese motif. Eldar follow paths as they age, the path of the warrior, the seer, the poet, the diplomat, the bone singer, and so on. These paths are a strict code of conduct to hone the heightened Eldar psychology down a school of thought and action. And if it sounds a hell of a lot like Bushido, well, you're damn right. Here's a medal and a soul stone. Don't lose it or an eternity of torment awaits you. Going through these paths will allow you to take up not just a role in Eldar society, but keep your mind clear from the past worries that plagued them. Every Eldar is said to be a psyker, however, very few of them actually utilize their psychic powers for fear of tempting she who thirsts. A large amount of emphasis is also put on ancestors of the Eldar and learning from them the farther you go down a path. This can sometimes be seen by the large variety of jewels adoring the armor of Eldar. Those are called soul stones, the biggest middle finger to Slaanesh they can think of. See, when an Eldar dies, these stones act as a backup, and instead of their souls going to Slaanesh, they are then trapped and stored in this little stone. So when the Eldar say they commune with their ancestors, they mean so very literally, as the spirit and soul of generations before them are stored here. Often, larger structures may contain vast amounts of soul stones, such as the Infinity Circuit in the craft world itself, allowing the souls of the dead to help power their enormous starship. The young do not desire the discipline of the path, but rather their curiosity drives them to try every fruit from the tree. Thus, it is that so many take the path of wandering or the path of damnation in their first years of adulthood. And so the great tragedy of our kind is played out again and again as the number
It's the
of
curiosity
our
that
people shrink
killed
from
the
generation to
Eldar.
generation. These paths, when completed, allow an Eldar to move to the next one, then the next one. However, since this is the grim darkness of the world, many of these paths rely on combat. The Eldar actually had gods at one point. Cain, Vol, Isha, Azaryan.
Okay, never heard about them. The gods, the elder gods from the past? Didn't know they had gods other than Slaanesh. What's the lore of the jar? Why is there a jar?
And so on. These gods are aspects of the Eldar pantheon, and while many were killed in Slaanesh's creation, their teachings live on. For some, the strongest devotion to the Eldar gods is to join the Aspect Warriors and embody the wrath of Cain, their god of war. While guardians of the Eldar craft worlds are more akin to a trained militia, the Aspect Warriors embody a particular variant of the path. Each are led by a Phoenix Lord, a name passed down from generations and embodying the souls of prior Phoenix Lords with each new one. The Howling Banshees, led by Jane Czar, Fugin and his Fire Dragons, Baharoth and his Swooping Hawks, or Malgan Ra and his Dark Reapers. Each
Okay. I'm missing out on a lot of the Eldar gods lore.
Aspect Shrine carries with it the Eldar way of war. Fast, hard-hitting, and incredibly tricksy, for they do not have the numbers to fight in any other way. The Craft World Eldar show how mangled an empire can be by their own actions. They once ruled the galaxy in an honest, non-hyperbolic way, but in the end, they were bested by themselves, and their most prominent remnants are forced to drift aimlessly through the galaxy, trying to save their species from extinction and resist the temptations of she who thirsts. But for some, the party
continues.
just beginning. Deep within the webway is the city of Kamara. This dark city once existed as a port in the webway that allowed for ease of transport for the Eldar between its various domains. The significance of this city meant that it needed to be a bit more of a neutral territory outside of the jurisdiction of general Eldar law, and therefore it was allowed to self-govern. This did not go well. The Dark City became the hideaway for all manner of sin. The Eldar...
Oh gosh. I remember. Oh, how bad it is from the first video. Gosh, the Elder... You know, I'm a big fan of elves in every universe. Although I know in like every universe, they also have the feeling of they have a bit of a superiority complex because they're elves. They're powerful, they're strong, they're beautiful, yada yada yada. But this is one of the darkest stories in Warhammer that I have encountered so far.
Race slipped into debauchery on a galactic scale that it birthed a god, and this was the city you went to when that wasn't enough for you. The convenience of being so deep within the webway was that it exists as a blind spot to the horrors of the warp. So while the rest of the Eldar fled the downfall of their species, Kamara kept partying. When Slaanesh was birthed,
like
they were saved the worst of it, thanks to them being nice and neatly tucked away inside the webway. But only somewhat. The Dark Prince did not have a grip around their soul, but the tiniest pinky finger, and they were still pulling. But due to their excess hedonism, they found a solution to this problem. If they tormented others, they could temporarily rejuvenate their souls and continue to cheat their inevitable death by placating the Prince of Pleasure. And if they kept this up on the regular, they could effectively become immortal. Thus, the Drukhari were born. Unlike the more stoic elves you see in works of fiction, the Drukhari themselves exist as a sort of analog of the more grim and fiendish elves you find in Norse and European mythology. The Drukhari are soul vampires, but the more basic means to feed are hardly enough to keep them going. This desire to feed is known as the thirst, and to quench it effectively, they have mastered the art of biotechnology and dark sciences to really juice themselves up on the crispy soul sprite from the vending machine.
Crispy soul sprunk. Yeah, if there is anyone I am scared of in Warhammer universe, it is them. I'm not scared of Khorne demons. I'm not scared of the Necrons. I'm not scared of the Khatan. I'm scared of these guys.
Called the Galaxy. The majority of Drukhari act as pirates and raiders and slavers. They go into our physical reality and drag people back to Kamara to commit atrocities that go beyond any imaginative torture a human can think of. The Drukhari are organized in various groups throughout the Dark City to accomplish this in a more organized and extremely brutal way. The Cabals act as the main warriors of the city, led by their Archons. Witches and Succubi act as entertainment for Kamara in gladiatorial arenas, and the flesh-crafting homunculus keep the Drukhari alive and discover ever-increasingly more painful ways to torment their ever-increasingly large supply of slaves they are brought. The Dark Eldar see the other inhabitants of the galaxy as little more than cattle, livestock that can be brought to bay or slaughtered at any time. Their fodder, however, is not meat and muscle, but the anguish and despair of the weak. The Dark Eldar do indeed drink blood, but also tears, and most sustaining of all, the raw essence of pain they wring out of their captives.
This is what makes me so afraid of them. Such evil beings. Well, evil is definitely on the spectrum in Warhammer universe, but they're definitely on top of the evil spectrum.
The truth of the matter is that Drukhari sustain themselves on the suffering of others, not just morally, but physically. Kamara is a city rife with backstabbing schemes and murder. It is the worst back alleys of the worst ghettos at the best of times. Nothing is more horrifying to a Drukhari than death, for death will see them in the talons of Slanesh for an eternity of torment. So they do everything they can to stop this. The homunculi covens regrow dead members from pieces of flesh as bargaining chips. The succubi create grisly gladiatorial spectacles that literally rejuvenate the audience members as captives are murdered for sport. To be captured by the Drukhari is one of, if not the worst fate imaginable in the world of Warhammer 40k. In a universe built on war crimes, they are the most debased war crimers of all time. To be tortured and sacrificed in the gladiatorial arenas is a blessing, for you have escaped the fate of being in these flesh smiths' control group, or being turned into a living and breathing piece of furniture for an Archon's quarters. In a cruel twist of fate, a newly born Drukhari does not arrive into this world loving torture. It is something they must grow to love. Grow to appreciate the suffering of other beings in order to survive in the world they have been brought into. If they succeed,
oh my god, imagine if there was a story about one guy who was so against the teachings of everyone around them. That would be cool. That would be like a cool story. I didn't know about that.
Some of the worst monsters in the known galaxy, a dark reflection to the craft worlders, and a taste of what Eldar society was like before the fall. If they do not succeed, they must find purchase elsewhere. Often those will join smaller parts of Eldar society like the Hxdes or the Harlequins. Hxdes believe in a pre-industrial variant of their society, often retreating to more lush worlds to ride dinosaurs and live off the land. Prehistoric style that I would normally laugh at if they weren't riding dinosaurs like ballers. The Harlequin dancing troupe are a subsect of Eldar that are more than just a little strange. A carnival of dancing jesters that serve the Eldar laughing god of Kegarak. They arrive never when expected and leave just as quickly. Blurs of light carry their footsteps as they dance their foes into a grave. Combat is just as much of a joke as it is a play on bloody murder. They travel and aid many other Eldar and sometimes even humanity for reasons we can never understand. Perhaps one day we would have, were they not stripped of their army book and folded into the Eldari Codex. So I suppose it'll have to stay a mystery, or maybe it was one of Kegarak's master plans to get back at she who thirsts and save their species. Who could know? Perhaps it was all a sick and practical joke to Kegarak, and he would just find it very funny to watch me fumble the discussion of one human on a tiny blue planet across the galaxy. Oh, speaking of.
Yes! The Imperium of Man!
Before the fall of the
So, this is gonna be the end of part 1.